Welcome to the Huntley Leadership Podcast, helping leaders be a positive catalyst in the people they support, the organizations they serve, and the communities they live. This podcast will make you think, laugh, and grit your teeth with new determination to make your parish or business a place of transformation, passion, and purpose. If you're still breathing, you are powered for impact. Hello and welcome back to the Huntley Leadership Podcast. Thanks for joining us. If you're here for the first time, a special welcome to you. And for all of you that are returning, welcome home. It's good to have you with us. I love talking about all things leadership because it impacts every area of our life. But I believe to be the best leader possible, if we're in line and in keeping with God's call in our life, we have a much better chance of having the impact that we were made for. I'm so excited to talk to Jonathan Stevens. He's our guest today. He's a Catholic lay evangelist. He's got a beautiful story and a crazy journey. And that journey is not over. It continues. So I'm excited to share his story with you. I think you're going to find yourself in this story somewhere. And so I'm really excited to talk to you today, Jonathan. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Ron. Good to see you. And thanks for having me. What a treat.
It's my absolute pleasure. I know we were talking just before we hit the record button. I often say I've had many conversions in my lifetime, deeper conversions. And I remember one of them really revolving around John chapter 10:10, when Jesus said, "I came that you might have life and life to the full." I had a good life, a lot of great things going. I was in my early 20s, but I knew full well that I wasn't experiencing life to the full. But I was wrestling with my own hypocrisy because I had one foot in the church and one foot in the world. And I know we live in the world, but we're not of the world. But I was living a double life. And I felt like if I wanted to have that more, I needed to be aligned. And so that was the problem I faced in that moment, was my own hypocrisy. And was I willing to let it go? Was I willing to trust and go all in? And I'm so glad I went all in. It changed my life. But when did you kind of have a deeper conversion, and what was the issue you were facing?
Well, I suppose a little bit of background. I'm from London, south of London. I grew up in England. I was brought up to one of three brothers. My mum and dad, but more my mum, was a Baptist, come Methodist, come. I'm not sure, really. My mum used to, she was one of those people who went to loads of different churches.
Yeah.
We'd go to the Methodist church and then we'd go to the Plymouth Brethren. I mean, we were all over the place, which was,
Sure.
and at that time when I was growing up, I kind of sensed this was real. I sensed that there was, there's truth to this, but I later found out I thought like St. Augustine. I was thinking, someday, one day, but not yet. And that was a big thing for me. Was growing up, and also this came from conversations with friends. They were talking about some deeper things or whatever. I can't remember what the exact detail now, but I just remember just thinking, I don't really think like that. I felt pretty empty. As late teens, I spent most of my time being an expert drinker, as in expertly drinking far too much.
Yes.
That was pretty much my life, was that. I had no ambition career-wise. I was directionless. I was, one week I'm working for a surveying company. The next week I'm working for a manufacturing opticians. I was just directionless, and I felt empty. I felt as if I was doing nothing for anyone of any import whatsoever. I was just directionless and empty, feeling empty, really.
Wow. And I think I think a lot of people can relate to that. I mean, just think about the situation that our culture's in now in terms of mental illness and just a loss of identity and just an unsure of purpose. And there's probably a lot of people that can relate to how you're feeling back then. So what happened, Jonathan?
Well, As I say, I love to drink, and I like to think of myself at the time as a bit of a womanizer, but I was completely unsuccessful. That attitude was not shared by
The opposite sex.
by
Yeah.
the opposite sex. Yeah. So basically, what happened? There was a girl that I had been out with, and she moved on, and I just one day I just suddenly thought I'm going to phone her, and
Yeah.
it was anyway. So I phoned her. And she just said, "Look, I can't talk now. I've broken up with my boyfriend." So I'm thinking, yes. Anyway, so I phoned later. Anyway, and we got together. Anyway, I went. She was a member of a Catholic family. I didn't even know any Catholics.
Right.
Anyway, so I went there, and her mum started talking to us about this place called Medjugorje,
Mm.
and so they're talking about miracles and the Virgin Mary appearing and all of this stuff. And she showed us a video which was by an English guy called Ernest Williams called Dear Children. And it was, and bear in mind, I'm 19 at the time. I'm 19. And so this was a video of lots of vox pops of young people my age,
Mm.
English, in Medjugorje, talking about this experience of meeting God, how their lives have been changed, and this sense of peace and this extraordinary. And and I watched it, and I just thought, I believe them. I actually believe. What have they got, and why haven't I got it? I was just sort of like, I just sort of like, just overwhelming, uh, overwhelming sense of I'm missing out on something. And so they
Mm.
started talking to me about uh, the lady's mother started talking to me about the rosary. So she gave me a rosary. I started praying the rosary. They invited me to mass. So I went. So I went to mass. It's so funny. I went to this midweek mass. It was like, I don't know. It was Wednesday evening or
Yeah.
whatever. And I
Yeah.
turned up, and I've got a suit on because my experience of going to church. Well, they're all wearing jeans. Anyway, so to cut a long story short, I was in Medjugorje within about, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks. I decided I've got to go. Um,
Wow.
and I got there, and it was just the most extraordinary time. As I said, I'd like to drink, and so it
Yes.
was so on the way. We stopped over there. I think, I don't know. I can't remember the city now. Anyway, we stopped somewhere on the way. We flew,
Yes.
and we spent overnight. And so I met this guy on the plane who was on the same trip, and we went out drinking. So we spent the
Right.
evening drinking, and I smoked a lot of the time.
Or
And
were you in jeans? Like,
yeah, I was in Virginia. Anyway, so we got there, and the spent the day there. One of the big things there, for anyone who hasn't been there, is called Mount Križevak, which is Cross Mountain, which is it's a really hard climb. It's a hard, rocky mountain, but it's the Stations of the Cross.
okay.
Križevak means cross. So anyway, so I went. So everyone was going on the Stations of the Cross. So I went to go and do this. So it was like the night before, I had not much but sleep. I'd been drinking, smoking, been playing football, and all that sort of stuff. Got onto the Cross Mountain, and as I started to on the first station, I suddenly experienced this chest pain. It was quite extraordinary chest pain, and it was really tough. It was really really painful, and it was just really odd. I also started to sweat. Now, I don't want to be um, too
Right.
graphic, but it's important for the story. Is that I started to sweat so much that the sweat was dripping down into my eyes, and my eyes were stinging, and it was so I started to start the walk, and I couldn't do it. It was so much pain. I couldn't continue, so I stopped. Next day, doing various things. I went to various things, like went to hear this priest speak, and went to all these various things. There's lots of things in English going on. It
Yes.
was a youth festival at the time. Next day, that following evening, I went to do Stations of the Cross again. I set foot on the bottom of that mountain, and bang, in my chest just tightened up. The sweat started. Um, and it was unbearable. It was absolutely unbearable. And it's pretty freaky, as you can imagine. I mean, I'm thinking, I'm a young guy. I've never had anything that's. I mean,
Yeah.
I wasn't worried. I wasn't worried for my health. I was just worried about, what's going on. This is really. Anyway, so I didn't carry on. Oh, my earpiece has just fallen out. I've got one here. So the following day, I went to various talks and everything, and anyway, I was late for the English mass. But I
Mhm.
went in and I got there just in time for the homily, and there was an Irish missionary priest speaking, and he was talking about the sufferings of Christ, and he said, um, often people think that Jesus died because of loss of blood. He said that's not the case. He said that he died through asphyxiation because the weight of his body was pulling down on him, and his chest was being crushed.
Mhm.
And he said two things that really struck out. He said, I want you to imagine Jesus in the midday heat of Israel, with the sun beating down on his head, the blood from the crown of thorns mixed with his sweat, dripping down his face into his eyes, and the pain and the discomfort he would have experienced from it. And yet, because he was on the cross, he couldn't move his hands to wipe his brow or his eyes. And then he said, I want you to imagine the weight of his body pulling down on him and crushing him, and him not being able to breathe. But every now and again, him just finding the strength to lift himself up a little, just to take a breath and then say, I love you. I love you. And wow, that just like, well, you can imagine it really spoke to me.
Mm.
Those two things. But to hear those words, "I love you," was well, it was life changing. But it didn't have that much of an impact on me that in that moment. But it did later that day, I don't know, later on. There was adoration, and
Mm.
what they did there, they would have the monstrance in the center of a big marquee, and I can remember sitting there, and in particular, there's this young girl. She was probably my age, 19, 20 at the time. She was beautiful. She was lovely, gorgeous, and she was looking just gazing up at the monstrance.
Mm.
And there was a beauty in the way that she was looking. That's what I think was struck me. And I was just looking at her, and I started to get really, really annoyed internally,
Mm.
because you could see she was just gazing with this, had an incredible sense of love of the Eucharist. And I just thought, why don't I feel like that? And I was excited to get angry, and I stormed out. I actually got up and stormed out because it affected me that much. I went to go and get a coffee. There's loads of bars or whatever. So I went and got a coffee, and I deliberately sat on my own, miles from this table.
Mm.
And bear in mind, I'm 19 at the time. I'm sitting there, and there's a woman, an American woman. I assume she was American, who must have been my age now, so late,
Right.
oh, early 30s. No, so she was probably she was probably in her late 50s, I'd say. And she just
Yeah.
came, sat down there was loads of places she was sat. She just sat down, and her opening words were, um, opening words were, um, why did he never love me, or something like that. Sorry, my father never loved me. And I was thinking, what what do I say to that? And just a thought came to mind, was that I'd heard a priest say the following day, or in the last few days, and
Yeah.
I repeated exactly word for word what this priest had said. And she just looked at me, and it was like there was like this massive change in her face. She took my hand. She just said, "Thank you." and just got up and went. And in that moment, for the first time ever, I had felt, as I think I said to you earlier, I had done nothing of any value. And in that moment, I knew that whatever I just said, which I didn't know what it was
Mm.
particularly, had had an incredible impact on this stranger. And yeah, so, and then the pilgrimage continued, and I came back from that pilgrimage a changed man. There was no way that I could um, uh, see that my life without. I came away with complete and utter belief in God. There's no way that I could deny the existence of God, and also that intimate, that intimate God who I know loves me, who gave his life for me because he loves me. Um, of course, he loves all of us, but it became a personal thing for me. Yeah, and it was literally transformational. I know that that word is used a lot, but it's because it's has value, because it's true, isn't it?
Well, you need some word to describe, this is what I used to be, but here's who I am now.
Mm,
And so what's the word for that? Because that's what happens when to not to a lot of people when they encounter the love of God and surrender to it. Because some people encounter it and run, right? It's like, oh my gosh, that was powerful, and they go the other way because they, yes, but not yet. That maybe someday, but I've got a life to live, and I'm not going to let God get in the way. And but boy, when you do let God get in the way, when you partner with Him, it changes things. It's it's a beautiful story, and it's neat that you were 19, 20 years old when that happened. Um, I think about my son right now and my daughter. They're both involved with Alpha at their local parish, and they decided with the or the pastor and the priest to do an Alpha specifically for people under 35. Then they got 140 people out, which
wow.
we've never seen that ever in that church. And a lot of people are having that Medjugorje experience, right in the basement of the church, so to speak. And the pilgrimage is 12 weeks long in terms of
Mm,
just showing up at Alpha. And it's just so amazing to hear the stories and to hear my son just kind of like what you said with that lady. You said something and her whole face changed, and you could tell that she was changed. Like you could see the change in her. And my son's telling me these stories. He's starting to see the change, and these people are giving testimony to these changes, and it's just so exciting. And they're so young,
mm.
and 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 when that happens, you get the rest of your life ahead of you. And so how did that change your trajectory, would you say?
Well, completely. I mean, it was like, so at the time I was working for an insurance company. As I said, I've had many, many jobs, and actually, this job I was actually doing quite good at. Anyway, I went on pilgrimage, and the week before going on pilgrimage, I was being told how well I was doing, and then I came back and I was laid off. So,
Right.
so anyway, so I was laid off. The following, so as I say, I live in London, and and I wanted to go to mass on the Sunday, but I didn't really know any Catholics locally, particularly.
Wow.
And So I'd met a guy who lives in Birmingham, which is like, I don't know, 150 miles away, something like
Yeah.
that. And so I phoned him in the morning and said, "Have you been to mass yet?" And he said, "No." I said, he said, "I'm going this evening." I said, "Do you mind if I come with you?" He said, "No." So I got in the car and I just drove and I went to mass. Anyway, so just went. So it turned out when I got there that his parish priest had asked him to talk about his experience in Medjugorje. Um,
Come
but
on.
yeah, and so the so the priest so my friend said, "I think you should do it. You know, I think you should do it." So I ended up going to this church. I mean, this church was packed, and so I just got up and told my story.
You gotta be kidding, Jonathan.
No. So there's this sort of lapsed Baptist come standing up in this church. I
That is
gave my
beautiful.
testimony and just talked about. Uh, and then I think the later that week I went to some prayer group somewhere in central London,
Mhm,
and again I'm to go to this prayer group. And again, this was a big prayer group. I mean, there was 100 odd people there, and I'm halfway through that I'm standing up giving my testimony. And that
mm,
became the future. Was it just happened, and it was great because I was happy to do it. I was happy to share this extraordinary thing which happened to me. It was just amazing. I
mhm,
wanted people to know about it. And then, as I say, I'd lost the work. I'd heard when I was in Michigan. I'd heard about there was going to be this youth retreat. I
okay,
didn't even know what a youth retreat was. I didn't even know what it was, but
sure,
probably like 30 miles from where I live. So I thought, oh, I'll go there, and it just suddenly struck me. I don't know why. It suddenly struck me. Well, if they're starting this on a Friday, they're probably going to be setting up on the Thursday. I just thought, oh, I wonder if they need any help. So I just got in my car and went down there, and I just met some people that have become lifelong friends, and I ended up helping them set up doing the. I don't really recall what I did at the time, and then we so because they were all students, and
yeah,
I was they were all at university, and so they had the summer off. But obviously, I've had a job, I had a car, and so I ended up. I think I went home for a night, and then I came back, and then ended up driving them, this group of young people, all the way up to Scotland to go to this prayer house, and I spent the rest of that summer just spent hanging out with these really cool people that became friends, and it's really funny because some of them were the people who I'd actually seen them on this video, which I'd seen in the first place. Yeah, it was amazing. It was amazing. Yeah, and in fact, we have a friend, both of us, Robert Toon, who's involved with
yeah,
Divine Renovation, who you know,
yeah,
where he and I and his now wife and another friend, Jane, um, we started to, well, they started really to organise these youth retreats, and I got involved with that, and what we found was, and then what's it called? Institutional history is always got is always legends grow up, don't they? So I
yeah,
might describe something in one way, and I can imagine you might talk to Robert or talk to Amanda or Jane, and they'll have a different viewpoint. But essentially,
of
we're
course.
yeah. So I remember the first event we did together as a group, the four of us, was in a place called in Beckenham in South London, and I don't know, let's say 100, young people turned up. And I think we were doing it as a reunion type thing for the people that'd been to Michigan in the summer. It's a way to regather them together. But what we found was that lots of people came who hadn't been, and they had these conversion experiences.
Mm,
Um, I remember there's one lady who had the name was Sarah. I remember this so clearly. She had really bad severe food allergies, and
yeah,
she couldn't eat anything basically. I mean, it was mad. Anyway, someone prayed for her for healing of her food allergies, and she thought she'd test it, and she had this little piece of chicken, and she said, if I have this chicken, and I will know straight away whether I've been healed or not. And so she took a little bite of this chicken, and then another bite, and another bite. And I just remember she was running around the dining room. I've been healed, I've been healed. And so it was, yeah. But the thing about what we were doing was, which was different than at the time, was that we focused on Catholic essentials. So
mm,
our weekends were, we prayed the rosary, we had adoration, um, we had the mass and we had priests hearing confessions. And the
Yeah.
whole preaching, all of the preaching at the time, this is the early 90s, so there was some funky stuff going around in the church at the time.
Sure.
God bless, God bless those folks. But we've really focused on unapologetically Catholic theological teaching, for young people,
Yes.
and they responded massively to it. We had perpetual adoration, so literally 24 hours a day. That when we were there, apart from masses, of course, Blessed Sacrament was exposed. People took their time, and it was just an amazing experience. And it grew and it grew, um, and it started here in England, and then it's just crept around. Then it started again in the States, um, in the early 90s, and it became quite a big thing in America. I'm sure some of your listeners will probably will remember Youth 2000 and going along to as a young person to these events. And it was extraordinary and beautiful, and yeah, what a gift. What a gift. And the great thing is, we didn't have any any preconceived ideas of what this was going to be. We organized a retreat, which became something so much more. I can remember there was like a one stage we were involved in a meeting, and these older, because we were young, all young. There was an older,
Yeah.
caring, and wiser group of people who were involved in the church, wanted to gather us together to give us some advice and some guidance and all that sort of stuff. And I can remember one of them saying about it. We should think about how this can be internationalized and all this. And I can remember at the time just thinking, what are you talking about? Being really being a bit grumpy about it, internationalize it and all that sort of stuff. Then it turned out I became the international representative in those early 90s. I travelled all over the place, but yeah, God bless God,
God bless God.
eh?
Well, that's true. I remember with Divine Renovation, even similar thing. Just humble beginnings, and somebody said something like that too, and I too got frustrated. And next thing you know, I'm on planes flying all over the world speaking about parish renewal, and it's like, boy, I didn't see that coming. So I know
No.
I know what you mean. Like God's, yeah, when you continue to say yes to the Lord, you never know where your life's going to go, and you never know where that's going to take you. And so, yeah, if anybody's listening and they find themselves, continuing to come to faith and grow, like, don't be afraid of it. Continue to say yes, and you just don't know what that's going to bring to your life. But whatever it is, it'll be good, because if it comes from God, it's for your best interest, and He loves you, and it's good. So Youth 2000, a huge movement that really made a big difference. I just think of Steubenville, as you describe the retreats and what you did and how you did it. That's exactly how Steubenville University runs their retreats for young
Mm.
people today. So I wonder how much influence you guys had on them, because it's
Well,
literally the exact same thing.
yeah, I mean, so just going to that a bit deeper, which was what was interesting about this was that initially, when we used to have a healing service,
Hmm.
and we'd be in front of the Blessed Sacrament. But what we found, and we would pray with people. But what we
Yes.
found was there were so many people, we didn't have the time or the people to pray with everyone. And
Right.
so we used to work really closely with the Franciscan Friars of Renewal from New York, Father
Oh,
Benedict's group. And so they used to do all of our retreats. And
right.
one of the priests just suddenly thought, I've got an idea, just before we were about to start the healing service.
Yeah.
And what he did, he had a humeral veil, and he took the humeral veil and put it around the base of the Blessed Sacrament. And then he got somebody to read the story of the hemorrhaging woman from the gospel. Just to recall, Jesus is walking with the apostles in the marketplace, and it's crowded around, and there's loads of people. And there's a woman there who'd been bleeding for many, many years, and she'd been desperate for healing, and she'd never received it. And she reached out and touched the garment of Christ's garment, and she was healed. And he felt the power go out from him, and asked who touched me, and the apostles were like, oh Jesus, look at the amount of people who touched you. He said, no, somebody touched me. Anyway, she was healed. So the healing service was the priest with the humoral whale walking around. I think it was in a school gym, and
Yes.
there's all these young people kneeling. And as he came past, each of the young people reached out as if they were in that marketplace,
Mm.
and people have experienced healings. People have experienced conversions. A sense of overwhelming peace, sense of joy. It's been an amazing thing, and I think you're right. When we started doing that all those years ago, there wasn't anything like that around, and now it's amazing. I go to places and I see it there. I just think, wow, and that is just an amazing thought from a priest, just on the spur of the moment. How God uses these ideas to become something far beyond what we could ever imagine, and and yeah, and so that's something. That experience of that Eucharistic healing service is something which I've been able to experience in a parish context, um, which has been amazing. But Ron, sorry.
No, that's great. And I was going to ask you, like, and so where are you at now? Like, tell us a little bit about how God's using you, and because you have a heart of an evangelist. It just cracks me up that you go to your buddies. You don't even know any. You kind of know one guy is a Catholic, 150 miles away, and so you call him up. Hey, have you gone to mass yet? And you end up giving your testimony that he was supposed to give at his church, like you have this spontaneity about you and your spirit that you're willing to be nudged by God, and you'll respond. Yeah, I bet you're a lot of fun to hang out with when you're 20. Not that you're not fun to hang out with now, but
I'm such a bore now.
yeah, get these responsibilities, but when you're young and you have less responsibilities, you can kind of just go with the wind, and it sounds like you really did a lot of that. But how did that continue to what are
Well,
you doing?
yeah. So, there was an interregnum period where I went into business,
Yeah.
which was great and everything. But that came to an end, and I got back into. My heart was always in the church. Anyway, I managed to get a job as a parish evangelization coordinator
Okay.
in Barnet in North London, and I've been there almost 7 years.
Wow.
And which has been an amazing experience. And we, as part of I was speaking when Ron and I had a conversation before we started the podcast, and I was saying that all of us who are involved in parish evangelization, we owe so much to our Protestant brothers and sisters, that they have given us so much encouragement. They've given us tools. They've given us confidence and hope that these things can be done,
Mm.
and it's fantastic. But as Catholics, I think we have so much that we can embrace at the heart of our church that we should not be fearful of. We really should be embracing them. So one of the things that has grown over the years, it didn't start out as this, but we do what we call a First Friday, which is we begin 7:30. We begin with a mass, and so we have a music group, a music ministry, who lead us in contemporary style worship music, and so we will have the mass, simple mass, followed by exposition, and the praise and worship continues. The whole approach to our evening is one of encounter. So we're very intentional I love that. That's such a divine renovation word. We still love. I love that word. Intentional. Um, in that we're intentional in the way that we lead that evening. The
Mm,
evening is about encountering God. You know,
mm,
it's about you know, it's about with the way we pray, the way we lead the prayer. We look. Um, the thing is, when you're leading prayer for people, we're there, we're echoing the words and the thoughts and the hearts of those who are there before the Blessed Sacrament in that moment. And so,
mm.
so we're trying to look at that. So, and there's people in there who are suffering.
Yeah.
There's people there who are broken. There's people there who are lost. I mean, there's also people there who are full of joy and hope and of
Yeah.
course. But we
Expectation.
all and sometimes, or many times, we don't flesh out those thoughts for ourselves. We know there's something going on, but we don't necessarily know what it is.
Mm,
So we're offering those hurts to the Lord. We're offering, but we're praying in a way that we're inviting God into that place for that person so they can experience that encounter with that extraordinary transformational love that God has for each of us, and that desire to make us whole and to what's it as the word of the gospel for Him to lavish His love upon us.
mm,
And what we found is that we have replicated that healing service, the one I was speaking of, and we do
mm,
that in a parish. So the priest will take the humeral veil again and will walk to the the altar edge, as it were, and people come forward and they kneel or they stand and they hold the humeral veils, and just for a moment, there they are, face to face with Jesus in that moment. Um, and it's been what a blessing it's been to see lives changed and transformed and healings take place. I can remember there was one lady. She said to me, I went up for the I went up for the to re- for the Blessed Sacrament, and is it normal to feel wind?" I said, what do you mean?" She said, "Well, I just felt this breeze." I said, "Well, I wouldn't say it's normal," but it was interesting because she went on to talk about that I'm not sure if it was COPD, but she certainly had experienced breathing problems for
mm,
most of her life, and she no longer does, from being there. And that's not because, what I love about it is, that's not because myself as a leader, or
mm.
Father John as a leader, or the music minister, or whoever's there. It's not because we said some wonderful words, or we stretched out our hands, and from within us no, it's not reliant on the human. It's
Mm.
God doing it. Now, of course, we're there cooperating and we're helping, and of course,
Yeah.
but the reliance is, it's Jesus is there, and He's um we had s- after I listened to one of your podcasts last month, and it reminded me, and you were talking about the Holy Spirit Day, where well, I wasn't, it's the Holy Spirit Day, but it was a day where you would invite people. You had this idea, you wanted to see how God had been working in the parish, and you wanted to get people to stand up.
Yeah, the Pentecost challenge to see
That's
who's
it.
become a disciple for the first time. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. So, and I'd heard you talk about this before, and it just suddenly struck me, oh, we should do that. Um, so, was it last Friday or whatever? So it was the beginning of December anyway.
Yeah.
Um, and the church is packed. There was about 200 people there, maybe more. And we did that. We invited people to wriggle their toes and to come forward and stand up. And I would say 95% of the church came forward.
Mm,
Um, they were coming forward because what they were doing, they were standing up in front of everyone and saying, "I have experienced an encounter with God in the last 12 to 18 months."
mm,
Um, and it was beautiful to watch, beautiful, and yeah, what can I say?
sounds like it sounds like your passion to bring people home to God is as alive and well as it's ever been. So what's next for Jonathan?
Well, so as I say, I live in London. I always joke that my wife is blessed to be married to me. I'm blessed to be married to a beautiful Carla. We have two children. She's Australian, and we've spent our whole married life in England. On January the 11th, so like less than 30 days, I'm getting on a plane and relocating my whole life to Perth in Western Australia. I know, wow. I'm beginning to think, oh, what am I doing? But, but
Payback
so,
time.
so we're doing that. It's great because my wife comes from a big Catholic family. She's got lots of brothers and sisters and nieces and nephews, and so there's cousins for my children, and so it's
Yeah.
great. And I feel like it's a call that we're being called to go and do that. What God has in store for me, I have no idea, absolutely no idea whatsoever. So I'm hoping to find some work there in the church. I don't know if that's going to be possible. I'm going there; no one knows me, so so that's quite unique. But I feel like a bit like Abraham and Sarah in a way that
Yeah.
we're being called to a foreign land. I'm not sure how my wife's going to respond to getting pregnant when she's 80, um, but yeah. So whatever happens, it will be fine. I think one thing I've discovered in this journey is that we go through seasons, and you know,
So
it,
true.
yeah.
So true. Well, I know we have listeners all over Australia, and so if you're listening and you're in the Perth area, stay tuned. Jonathan's coming your way with his family. And if you're a parish looking for somebody for evangelization, then you're going to want to get in touch with this guy. How do people get in touch with you? Honestly, like if there's somebody going,
Oh,
"Oh my,
okay. So
kidding,
as
that's awesome!"
oh,
Like,
that's a really good question. Okay, so as and as a secondary line of what I do is, and we've maybe ever spoken about, is that I actually build websites. I'm a web designer,
ah,
and I build parish-based websites because that's a great form of evangelization as well, which is under we don't I don't think churches value the how web design can be a big part of our mission. So I have a business and you can find me at www.beardfish.co. So beard, like on my face, fish.co. Yeah, so
okay.
you can find me there.
.com, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, love it.
.co, yeah, which is the biggest regret of my life, to be honest with you. I get fed up with people saying, because in England, emails are .co.uk, and everyone says, is that .co? No, it's not .uk. Anyway,
True, isn't it? I made the same mistake. I think I sent you a note and put that M on that co, and then and so
well, there
yeah,
you go.
there you go. So don't do that if you're reaching out to Jonathan for websites or what to welcome him to Perth and get him involved in your church, because that would be great. I'm so excited for you. It really is fun, and again for our listeners that have maybe started the journey of faith and just wondering, you know, what do I do now? And I think maybe it's just keep saying yes and just seeing where the Lord takes you. And like you say, you spend a lot of time in business as well. So have I. I spent years in the
Yeah,
pharmaceutical industry and sales and all kinds of things that I've done in my life that I've really enjoyed. And all of it's brought me life and peace and happiness and give me a sense of purpose and meaning. And so you just never know what God's going to do with you once you say yes. And it never ends. Like you're heading to Perth, for heaven's sakes.
life's a journey.
Life's a journey. Yeah.
As when I became Catholic, somebody in their notes they said they put bon voyage, and I just think that is so apt because it is. It's just a journey.
It's the ultimate adventure, isn't it? Yeah. Well, Jonathan, thank you for sharing your inspirational story today. And again, it's fun to see how God, spending up to a certain point, feeling that you haven't made a difference, that you really haven't helped anybody, And then that conversion actually turned the tap on like crazy and blessing people through your youth ministries, through your parish ministry, through your work that you do with websites, and it continues. So thank you for your faithfulness to the church and to God's call in your life. You're a good man, and I'm glad you're a friend.
Thanks, Ron. Thanks for your time, and thanks for all you do.
You're most welcome, my friend. And so again, thank you for joining us on this conversation. I hope in your church you're making new disciples. And if you're not, why not? There's no life like it. So get to work in evangelization. Pick a tool, get to work, start experimenting and get good at it. Because when people come home to God, you change the trajectory of their entire life and their entire family. And there's no life like it. So thank you for what you do. God bless you. And we'll see you next time.
I want to encourage you, as you lead this week, be faithful to God and generous to others. See you next time, and remember, if you're still breathing, you are powered for impact.